Good evening and welcome back to the question and answer series of anash.org. I have received a lot of questions regarding the halachas of the 3 weeks of Bein Hamtzorim. So let me just go over in short what is Asur in the 3 weeks. Again, we are talking about in the 3 weeks, not on the 9 days. From Shavuos B'Tammuz till Rosh Chodesh Av. Now, the first thing we know that basically we don't make chasanas in these days. And same is that we don't hear music in these days. We can make a bar mitzvah, we can make a l'chaim, but we don't use music by this simchas. You cannot take a haircut all of the 3 weeks. And you don't make a shechiyanu in the 3 weeks, and that's even not on Shabbos. So you don't buy a new peir, a new fruit, which you have to make a shechiyanu, because you don't make a shechiyanu, which you don't need. Now, to making a pidyon aban, and you have to say a shechiyanu, of course you're going to say it, because that's a mitzvah iveres. You have to make the pidyon aban on time, and you have to make a shechiyanu. So any mitzvah which you have to say, you're going to make a shechiyanu. A person has a baby girl. According to the minig, who has the minig that you make a shechiyanu when you see your daughter the first time, of course you do it, even though it's in the 3 weeks. But anything which it's not you have to do, it's not a mitzvah veres, that means eating a new fruit, or putting on a new dress, which you make a shechiyanu, you don't make in the 3 weeks, even not on Shabbos. That's minig Chabad. Buying new clothing is the main reason why we don't buy new clothing, is because we buy new clothing, you have to make a shechiyanu. So nowadays that we don't make a shechiyanu on new clothing, at least most of us, basically should have had been the halacha that you have no problem to buying in the 3 weeks a new dress or a new clothing. But after all, the minig is that any clothing which when api shechanarich you had to make a shechiyanu, and we would have made a shechiyanu once upon a time, we don't buy in the 3 weeks. So therefore, even though we don't make a shechiyanu on it, if it will be a dress or something, a clothing, a suit, a kapata, which you make usually a shechiyanu, even though you don't have the minute to make shechiyanu, you don't buy in the 3 weeks. You don't buy really expensive items. For instance, you don't buy a house in the 3 weeks, you don't buy a new car, you don't buy new jewelry. All these things you don't buy, but regular household things you have no problem to buy in the 3 weeks. Even furniture you could buy. And as I mentioned last week, somebody has to deliver furniture or deliver a kitchen cabinet which was ordered. You have no problem to installing it. The Rebbe writes that you shouldn't move over to a new dire, a new apartment in the 3 weeks. Only if you put in some chashva stuff beforehand, food or stuff, not just anything, something which you put in before the 3 weeks. That means you moved already, so to speak. So then you can move in also in the 3 weeks. You don't do anything which is misukan. So therefore, some people say if you want to do parachuting or even going jet skiing in the ocean, all those things you don't do the 3 weeks. The Aliyah Rabbah brings down from the Meril that a person should not paint or build something new in his house in the 3 weeks. But if he started before the 3 weeks, he could continue. So if somebody wants to be machmer, not to call a painter in the 3 weeks, Yeshlem Ami Lismach to be machmer, because the Aliyah brings that down from the Meril. But if he started painting already, then he could for sure finish it. But some people are not machmer on this at all. But again, it's a thing, a meaning which is brought already in the Meril. Another thing which we know, and the Rebbe brings it down too, that you don't make any non-necessary, non-essential medical procedures like operation or etc. in the 3 weeks. Now, if you need to do it, it's an emergency, of course you do it. But if you don't need to do it, you can push it off, then you push it off till after the 3 weeks, till after Tisha B'Av, or till after Tezvuv B'Av, and then you doing it. But you could go to swim the 3 weeks, and even if you never went to swim this year before the 3 weeks, you could start the first time going the 3 weeks. There's a myth which people say that if you didn't go to swim before the 3 weeks, you're not allowed to swim in the 3 weeks. But that's no way found in the poskim, and you could go swimming in the 3 weeks till the 9 days. Question. Last shiur, you mentioned about the hefsek of a omein after saying the bרכת המוציא. If the omein is from another person who is also saying hamotzi, is that okay with the evet or not? The Mishnah in Siman Reish Tezvuv brings a machloikes in it. In B'sharat Shiva Sifkut Beis, he brings a machloikes. The Mugavrum holds that it's not good, even by the evet, it's a hefsek. And some poskim say it's not a hefsek, but the Mugavrum says it's a hefsek. In the Alter Rebbe, paskens like the Mugavrum. Alter Rebbe in Siman Chuf Hai, Sif Chuf Aleph, paskens like the Mugavrum. So therefore, even by the evet will be a problem. Some poskim will say by the evet you shouldn't say over the bracha, but Akapun and the Mugavrum holds that even by the evet is a problem, and the Alter Rebbe paskens like that. Question. Regarding an oven that has a Shabbos mode, is there any issue with putting a challah inside the oven that is on Shabbos mode on Shabbos in the morning? The answer is no. You cannot put in a challah even though it was baked fully. Putting it into an oven is asur, because chazura alo aish, that means putting anything on the fire itself, is a problem. You cannot do it on Shabbos. Before last week we spoke about putting it on top of a pot, but putting it anu aish on the fire itself is asur. So all the ovens are not grufe ketuma, that means it's not cover the fire, so automatically it's asur. That's number one. Number two, bechlal, chazura is mitter only betach, only on top of a kira and not betach hakira. So therefore, no, you cannot put in a challah in an oven, even though it's on Shabbos mode. It's not permitted to putting in a challah to warm it up on Shabbos. Question. Is there any issue with moving the tray the Shabbos candles are on? Okay, the question is, you have a candelabra and a tats underneath. If you are permitted to move the silver, what is it called, tats, which the candelabra is on it. When the lech is burning, of course, there's no such thing as moving the candles, because even if you put on the table the licht, the candles, and you put a challah, so at least the table does not get the bosses, a holder for dovra usur, because it's a holder for dovra usur, which is the candles, and it's a bosses also for the challah, which is a dovra mitter, and is a choshva thing. Putting on a napkin does not mean anything, because it's not choshev. Putting on something which belongs to the Seder Shabbos and Iker Seder Shabbos, like a challah, it is fine and makes it shouldn't be a babosis only for a dover asur. It's a holder for asur and mitter, and therefore you are permitting to moving the table. But when the candles are on, you cannot move it, because most of the candles, if it's oil, or if it's liquid paraffin, or if it's neronim, which becomes liquid paraffin, when you move the table, it will be a problem of to make closer the fire with the oil together. You connect the fire to the oil. When you're gonna push the table, automatically you're gonna put more oil to the fire, and that means you're making more fire. So any time when the candles are burning, only if you have the paraffin candles, which is a candlestick, and you move it very, very, very slow, you can move it. But that's regarding moving when it's burning. When it's not burning, we're going into the problem of a bosses. Now, if you mentioned before, if you have a challah on the table does not become bosses. Okay, but now the question is, if the tray under the candelabra, which that's for sure a bosses for the candelabra, is there any way how to move that? It is not a posture to think. But some poskim say, if you put something on the tray, which is basically very, very expensive, more than the whole candelabra. That means candelabra is silver, so it's going into the gather of mitzvahs with kiss, and it's an expensive thing. But if you put on, let's say, a diamond ring or a gold watch, some poskim will say that you could move then the tray because it is a basis for the expensive jewelry and for the candelabra, and the jewelry is more expensive than the candelabra, so therefore you can move it. But other poskim do not agree with it. Why? Because a table is a thing which it's a basis. That means it holds challahs, food, candles. So that then you could say, if you put on the table a challah, the table does not become a basis. But a tray under a candlestick, automatically, it's made for the candlestick. It's not. You don't need for the watch or for the diamond ring, you don't need the tray. So therefore, the tray is made for the muktzah, it's not made for the thing which is not muktzah. So therefore, some poskim do not agree with this kind of heter. But, b'shas chag, when you need to move it, sometimes you need to move it, and you don't have a goy to move it, so therefore, you could rely to put a diamond ring or a watch before Shabbos, has to be before the Shkia, and you keep it during the whole Bein HaShmoshes on the tray, and then after the candles are gone, you could move the candlesticks and the candelabra. Follow-up question. Last week we spoke about buying coffee in a non-kosher restaurant. So the follow-up question was, is it b'chal permitted to walk in to a non-kosher establishment, a non-kosher restaurant? The answer is like this. The Gemara says that a town which has a avodah zarah inside, you cannot go into that town. You can go outside of the town, you cannot go inside. If the avodah zarah is outside of the town, right outside of the town, then you can go inside, but you cannot go outside. Why? Because it's maras ayin. People will see that there's over here a town which is avodah zarah inside. It's a goyish town, so to speak. So when a yid goes in, it's probably he goes in to Rahman al-Islam, worship the idols. So therefore, it's a chashash maras ayin. And we know every Issa Daraisa is there such thing as chashash maras ayin l'chaladais. So a lot of poskim, including the Moshe Feinstein, Nigris Moshe, Rechaim Chalik Baisim Amem, and a couple of other poskim say that the person is not permitted to go into a non-kosher restaurant because a person will see that you're going into the non-kosher restaurant, that he will think that you're going to eat non-kosher. So that's maras ayin. So therefore you're not permitted to go in. And that will be even in a place which there's no Jewish people around. That means you're driving from here to Atlanta to Detroit, and you're stopping in the middle of the way, you want to go into a McDonald's or you want to go into a non-kosher restaurant. So they say you cannot do it, although there's no Yid, there's no Marasayin, because we know anything which has Marasayin is a fila b'chadra chadurim, even in your house, you cannot do it. So therefore, even there's no Jewish people, Chazal put such a thing as a Marasayin, a Isa Marasayin, and therefore you cannot go in over there, and even if you want to go to the men's room, etc. But there are some poskim, the Minchas Usher, he wants to say that nowadays it is permitted to go in because you could always say you went in to buy a soda, you went in to buy water, you went in to buy a drink which is kosher, or you went into the men's room. So therefore, is they want to be being lenient, they want to be Michael. B'poil, halacha l'maaseh, I would say that there's two restaurants. There is a restaurant, for instance, let's say a Starbucks, or rest areas which there's restaurants because you could see that they sell soda or water or snacks which might have a hechsher. So then, like I said, you could go in over there and buy, because if a person will see, or he can make the cheshbon that you went in and bought something which is kosher, and b'chlal it's kedai, if you have to go there and buy something, come out with the water in your hands, and people should see that you bought a soda, or you bought a Coca-Cola, you bought a snack which is kosher. Then is no problem. Today's day it's easy to come out without people should see, because it's illegal to sell bags. So that's one of the good things of not giving back. So at least it's not Marasayin, but also this you should do only la'isa tzoyrech. But then there's other restaurants, for instance, restaurants which is steakhouses. You're going in Manhattan, or you're going where there's a steakhouse, which they don't sell you a soda, they don't sell you a water, but you want to go in to the men's room. Dort darf man machmazan b'chlal, all over. And even in its kedai b'chlal machmazan in these things, because when a person sees a frum person going into a non-kosher restaurant, even if you won't think that he went in to buy something non-kosher, he might think it's a kosher restaurant, because he saw a Jewish guy over there walking around. So therefore, it's kedai, in any case, not to walk in, to go in any case, to a restaurant or a establishment which is basically a non-kosher establishment. Because, again, first Marasayin, that maybe you buying something non-kosher, and even more important, people will think it's a kosher restaurant, and they'll buy a thing, they're not going to check for the hechsher. So therefore, it is not kedai to do it. Even though there are some poskim which are Michael, it is not kedai to do it now. Tzoyrech gudel mo'oid, once you come in an area, then you have to go in, you have to go to the men's room or the ladies' room, or you have to do something, you could be mesoymech, but it's not like a tchila to do it. I know a story that a Yid got an offer in a store, in a big store, that he should work there, and they wanted he should work right next to the window, because they felt that he's going to work right next to the window. People will see from guy, so all the from people will come in and buy stuff, although not necessarily it was a kosher establishment. So therefore, you have to be very careful of those things. The Moshe holds it's Asur, and I saw from Rechaim Pinchas Scheinbeck and other poskim which say it's Asur B'chlal. But even though we have some poskim which are Michael, it is not kedai to be Michael only, the Tzorich Gudel, because all the consequences of Marasayin. Question. I was in the middle of Kriya Shema where my father made Havdalah. So I stopped and I was listening when he was making Havdalah, when I was in the middle of Kriya Shema. Was I Yoitza Havdalah or not? The answer to this question is yes. If you stopped and you're Yoitza, b'de'evet, you're Yoitza. If you listened to Havdalah, b'de'evet, you're Yoitza. We know that a person is holding a middle of Shema in Esra, and he cannot answer Kedusha or Kaddish. Steht in Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe brings it down. You should stop, and you should listen to Kaddish, you should listen to Kedusha, and your Yoitze, Kedusha, and Kaddish, by Shomai Koine. That means by listening, which the Shlich Tzibur says, you are yoytze with what he said. Shomai Koine. So when you are stopping in the middle of Kriya Shema, or even in the middle of Shema Nesra, and listening to Havdalah, you have your mind to be yoytze, you are yoytze Havdalah Shomai Koine. Now the poskim bring this down, that you're yoytze, but they also say that you shouldn't do it like a tchila, it's only about the evet. Why? Because there is a shittas atoisvus. This is shittas Rashi. Rashi holds that there's no problem, you just stop and listen Shmai Koine. That means a person holds a mitten Shema Nesra, he can listen to Kedusha, he's yoytze Shmai Koine, and it's not a hefsek. So we apply this thing also, the same to our shaila, that if you're holding Milav Shema Nesra Krishma, you hear Avdullah, you're yoytze. But you shouldn't do it because Toises disagrees with Rashi. In Toises holds it is a hefsek. Now, although we are paskening like Rashi, so therefore the poskim say that like tchila we shouldn't do this because after all Toises holds it's a hefsek. But if you did do it and you don't want to make Avdullah again or you can't make Avdullah again, you are yoytze with the evet. Okay, so we're going to see you hopefully next week again, and please send in your questions to inbox@anash.org, and have a good night and a good week.